house carrying a black garbage bag. She looked calm. Too calm. She had just spent the last 20 minutes trying to erase every trace of what happened inside. She wiped the door handle. She cleaned the floor. She checked her phone. And before leaving, she looked through every window to make sure nobody was watching. She thought she had covered everything. But there was one thing she never checked. A small CCTV camera mounted across the street. And that camera had been recording her the entire time. What she didn't know was that the footage would eventually reveal something even more disturbing than the crime itself. Because investigators didn't just see her leaving that night. They saw what she did before she left. And once detectives watched those final minutes frame by frame, they realized the woman wasn't trying to hide a crime. She was trying to hide a mistake. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. The neighborhood was the kind of place where people recognized the cars parked outside their neighbors' houses and noticed when something looked different. Nothing seemed unusual that night. Lights were on in several homes. A few cars were parked along the street. And inside one particular house, a young woman named Maya was sitting across from her boyfriend, Daniel. To everyone who knew them, Maya and Daniel appeared to be a normal couple. They had been together for almost 3 years. They had argued before. They had broken up before. And they had always managed to find their way back to each other. But that night was different. Their argument wasn't about money. It wasn't about another woman. And it wasn't about something Daniel had done that week. According to the story Maya would later tell investigators, Daniel had threatened to leave her. She claimed he had become increasingly distant. She said he was planning to end their relationship. But there was something she didn't tell anyone. Daniel had discovered something about her. Something Maya desperately wanted to keep secret. And by 10:30 p.m., the argument inside the house had become impossible to ignore. A neighbor later reported hearing shouting. Then, silence. At 10:52 p.m., Daniel's phone received a message. It was never answered. At 11:03, another message arrived. Still nothing. By midnight, his sister was worried. Daniel wasn't the kind of person who disappeared without telling anyone. She called him. His phone rang and rang, but nobody answered. She tried again. Nothing. At first, she assumed Daniel and Maya were arguing and didn't want to be disturbed. But the following morning, Daniel still hadn't contacted anyone. His sister went to the house. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Then she noticed something strange. Daniel's car was still parked outside. His wallet was inside. His keys were inside. His phone was inside. But Daniel was nowhere to be found. Maya wasn't there either. And that was when the first alarm bell rang. Police were contacted. When officers arrived, Maya eventually returned. She appeared nervous. But she wasn't crying. She told investigators Daniel had left the house after their argument. According to her, he had been angry. He grabbed his jacket. He took his car. And he walked out. That explanation initially sounded possible. Until detectives noticed something. Daniel's car was still outside. Maya quickly changed her explanation. She said Daniel must have left on foot. But if he had left on foot, why had his phone remained inside? Why were his keys still on the table? And why did his sister insist Daniel would never leave without his car? The questions began piling up. Maya became defensive. She told detectives she was tired. She said she had already explained what happened. And then she made a mistake. She asked, "Do you think I'm responsible?" The detective hadn't accused her of anything. He hadn't even mentioned murder. But Maya had already introduced the word into the conversation. Investigators searched the house. At first, they found nothing obvious. No weapon. No blood visible on the walls. No broken windows. No signs of forced entry. Everything appeared strangely normal. Almost too normal. The living room was clean. The kitchen was clean. The hallway was clean. And then an investigator noticed something. One section of the floor looked slightly different from the rest. Not dirty. Not damaged. Just recently cleaned. The detective crouched down. He examined the surface carefully. Then he looked toward Maya. "Who cleaned this floor?" Maya paused. She said she did. "Why?" She shrugged. She said she had spilled something. That answer created another problem. Because the cleaning appeared to have been extremely thorough. Investigators collected samples. They searched the house again. And eventually, they found evidence that suggested something violent had happened there. Daniel hadn't simply walked away. He had been killed. Now the question became, who did it? Investigators began reconstructing the timeline. They checked Daniel's phone. They checked his bank activity. They checked nearby businesses. And then they asked a simple question. What cameras were operating around the house that night? There was a security camera outside a nearby property. It faced part of the street. At first, investigators weren't expecting much. The camera was positioned too far away to clearly identify someone's face, but it could capture movement. And when detectives requested the footage, they found something. At 11:47 p.m., a woman walked out of Maya's house. She was carrying a large black garbage bag. The woman walked toward a vehicle, stopped, looked around, then placed the bag inside. Investigators zoomed in. The image wasn't perfect, but the clothing looked familiar. So did the vehicle. They checked Maya's car. The same vehicle. The footage suddenly became very important. But detectives still didn't know what was inside that bag. Then they watched the footage again. This time, frame by frame. At 11:49 p.m., Maya stopped beside her car. She looked toward the house. Then she looked down the street. She appeared to be checking whether anyone was watching. Then she did something that investigators couldn't explain. She walked back toward the house. She opened the front door and disappeared inside. 30 seconds later, she came back out. But this time, she wasn't carrying the garbage bag. She was carrying something much smaller. A phone. Daniel's phone. Investigators immediately checked Daniel's phone records. The phone had remained inside the house all night. But there was more. At approximately 11:50 p.m., someone had attempted to access Daniel's phone. The attempt failed. Then another attempt was made. And another. Maya had previously told police she never touched Daniel's phone that night. The CCTV footage suggested otherwise. And now detectives had a reason to question her again. Maya returned to the station. This time, detectives didn't confront her immediately. They allowed her to tell the story again. Same house. Same argument. Same ending. Daniel supposedly walked away. Then the detective placed a photograph on the table. It showed Maya standing outside her house at 11:47 p.m. She stared at it. Her expression changed. The detective asked, "Do you know what this is?" Maya didn't answer. He placed another photograph beside it. Daniel's phone. Then another. The black garbage bag. Finally, the detective said, "We know you were outside." Maya insisted she had already explained that. Then came the question that changed everything. "Why did you lie about touching Daniel's phone?" Maya became silent. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then she said something investigators hadn't expected. "I didn't mean for him to die." That was the first admission, but it wasn't the last. According to the story Maya eventually told, the argument had become violent. Daniel had decided Maya had been hiding money from him. He confronted her. She became angry. He threatened to leave. The argument escalated, and during the confrontation, Maya attacked him. What happened next was fatal. Daniel died inside the house. Instead of calling for help, Maya panicked. She began thinking about consequences. She thought about prison. She thought about losing everything. And then she made a decision. She would make it look like Daniel had left. She cleaned the house. She moved evidence. She tried to remove anything that could connect her to the crime. Then she placed Daniel's body in a location where she believed nobody would find it quickly. She thought she had controlled the entire scene. But she had forgotten one thing. The camera. Investigators went back through the CCTV recording, and they found something else. Earlier that evening, Maya had walked past the same camera. She had no idea it was there. Hours later, after the killing, she came outside carrying the bag. The footage showed her behavior changing. Before the crime, she appeared relaxed. Afterward, she repeatedly looked around. She checked the street. She checked nearby windows. She even looked directly toward the direction of the camera. But she never realized what she was looking at. She thought it was simply a dark object mounted on a building. It wasn't. It was recording every movement, every trip outside, every attempt to remove evidence. And most importantly, the exact timeline. The CCTV footage contradicted several parts of her original statement. She had said she left the house only once. The camera showed her leaving 3 times. She said Daniel took his phone. The camera showed her carrying it. She said she never moved anything outside. The camera showed her carrying the garbage bag. Her story was collapsing, but investigators still needed to find the body. The CCTV gave them the timeline. Daniel's phone gave them additional evidence. The house gave them physical evidence, but there was still one missing piece. Where had Maya taken Daniel? Investigators studied the route captured by nearby cameras. They followed her vehicle, and eventually, they found the location. A secluded area several miles from the house. The same black garbage bag was discovered nearby, and the evidence inside connected the location directly to the crime. At that moment, finally understood what Maya had been trying to do. She wasn't simply trying to hide Daniel. She was trying to create a completely different story. She wanted investigators to believe Daniel had left voluntarily. She wanted everyone to believe he had disappeared. And for several hours, it almost worked. When Maya was confronted with the full evidence, her story changed again. This time, she admitted Daniel had never left the house alive. She admitted trying to clean the scene. She admitted taking his phone. And she admitted moving evidence. But there was one thing she continued to insist. She said she never planned to kill him. Whether investigators believed that explanation would ultimately be decided in court. What couldn't be denied was the evidence. The CCTV had captured her movements. The phone records contradicted her statements. And the physical evidence connected her to the crime. The woman who had spent hours trying to erase the evidence had unknowingly created a timeline of her own actions. Every step she took to hide the crime became another piece of evidence against her. Maya believed the most important part of hiding a crime was cleaning the scene. She was wrong, because sometimes the evidence you don't know exists is the evidence that destroys your. She thought investigators might examine, but she never looked up. And above the street, a tiny camera had been watching. It didn't need to understand what happened. It didn't need to identify her perfectly. It only needed to record. Because in the end, Maya didn't get caught because someone saw her commit the crime. She got caught because she was recorded trying to hide it. And that raises a disturbing question. If you were investigating this case, would you have believed Maya's first story before seeing the CCTV footage? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more crime stories where one tiny piece of evidence changes everything,